Then next up we get Kuroko's Basketball volumes. Where are we at here? 6 and 7, which correspond to 11 through 14. Which it's a good thing these come in these 2-in-1s because again, yeah, I just barrel right through these things because there's so much action and so much so much stuff with all these volumes as far as like a lot of the basketball games that can take up several chapters of just basketball, which is great. I love it. I just wish there was the basketball card in these, like in the last volumes. I don't know. Maybe they're saving them for the later volumes. I don't know. But in any case, I love Kuroko's Basketball. It's getting to the point a little bit where some of the the basketball stuff is getting a little too ridiculous. Like Kuroko's developed this kind of vanish move where he can somehow perfectly predict where somebody's gonna look so that he can move outside of their blind spot and disappear on them. Which again is one of those like, all right, you're stretching it a little bit. Nobody's that good, especially not a freaking high schooler at basketball. All right, yeah. But then again, it's manga. You gotta play it up. The other stuff though, I thought was really fun. Again, I love the interactions with what's his name, Takagi. Takagi and Kuroko. They've got such a great kind of bromance, and then also some of the backstory with some of the other characters, especially the one guy featured here who was who was kind of sort of injured and in his knee, and he sort of can't play. It's one of those, this is my last year, I can't play after this, so I got to put my all into it kind of thing, which I really love. That kind of, do or die kind of situation with it. And then also, there's a little bit of fan service, but I think it wasn't that bad. Again, we're almost at the halfway point for Kuroko's Basketball, which ran for 30 volumes, which seems to be kind of a standard as far as these sports manga series go. It seems like 30 is a good number for them. You get a whole big arc as far as where they go. So, lots of fun. Then, next up we get Wandering Sun, Volume 8, which this took a while to finally come out. I actually was afraid that this series had gotten canceled. Matt Thorne actually had to go online and reiterate that Wandering Sun wasn't getting canceled, it was just being delayed, which I was like, oh, that's good. Because I love this series. It's so good. It's like it kind of, it opened up a lot of things for me. Like, heck, this is the first time I saw a mention of LGBT. I didn't know what LGBT was until it was mentioned on the back of the first volume of Wandering Sun. I was like, I walk up to the counter at the comic shop and I was like, hey, what does LGBT mean? And he was like, lesbian, gay, trans, lesbian, gay, LGBT, bisexual, transgender. Yeah, and I was like, oh, it's one of those. And I was like, okay. And I still, gave it a shot and absolutely loved it. I love the art style. I love the presentation. I love the hardcover, which has been one of the biggest hurdles with this series going out, is that because of the higher quality of the volumes, that it basically, if they made it any cheaper, people wouldn't buy it, which I know sounds kind of odd, but basically, like, in order to cater towards the kind of crowd that they know would be buying this, they have to, like, up the quality level of the individual volumes, because I guess more people wouldn't want to buy it if it was made more cheaply. Like, if it was just hardcover and if it was like hardcover and like the digest size like this, they wouldn't get as much return per volume as they would if they were in the better quality hardcover like this. I'm not a finances expert and I'm not a sales expert, so For all I know, that's probably true. You know, Matt Thorne's certainly worked long enough in the manga and the manga translating industry to know more than I do about it. But in any case, that's supposedly why there's been such a delay. Is they're just working on trying to keep the money going to get to the end of this series, and it's only about halfway done. This is 8 of, I think, 15 volumes, so we're officially over the hump as far as volumes go. And I really love this volume itself, which featured it was good because since it was such a long break, it happens to start with the kids actually entering into a new grade level. So it felt kind of auspicious that, you know, it enters into a new grade level so that, you know, it doesn't feel like you're starting off from like some lingering plot thread. Like it's kind of like everything's new again. All right, next chapter, so to speak. And it does bring up some neat kind of things in here, like what's his name, Takako's. No, I'm sorry. Is it Yuki? Yeah, Nitori and Yuki. Basically, it's all about like Nitori dealing with having a girlfriend now, and whether or not he wants to tell her about how he likes to cross-dress and how she's going to react to it. And then there's also kind of this other subplot where Nitori finds out that he's actually planning on actually dressing as a girl to school, which of course, you know, I don't know how that plays out. You know, I wouldn't even know what to do in that kind of situation. You know, on the one hand, it's like, hey, you do you, man. You gotta just do what feels good. But on the other hand, it's like, you know, you're making yourself a target, and you know, is it really worth it to be a target like that at that age? To, you know, it's like who are you fighting for? Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I guess, you know, it's hard to really see from that perspective how somebody's feeling, and you know, how to weigh the options out and really kind of, you know, on the one hand, you'd want someone to be themselves and to express themselves, but on the other hand, you know that, like, you know how people are and how society is, and you don't want them to, you know, get something negative to happen to them as a result of, you know, society being, you know, kind of dickish. So, you know, it deals with a lot of those complex kind of issues and stuff. And then the other thing at the end, which I thought was odd, that Nitori had a guy at school tell him that he thought that he looked really cute dressed as a girl, which then is like, where does that fit in? Because it's not like, because is that gay or is that not gay? Like, I don't know. It's just, I guess it's something that obviously would come up, you know, if you're like, you know, that's the typical kind of, you know, guy bar kind of story where like, yeah, I hit on a chick and I found out she was a man, you know, kind of thing. And, you know, it's like, well, what happens, you know, if that happens at a much younger age? What does that do? You know, again, it's a neat series. I really love it, and I like that it's thought provoking in a lot of good ways. And I think it's a great kind of, I don't know. Maybe it would be presumptuous to say like it's something good to read for somebody who like wants to know more about kind of. I don't know if this necessarily paints the picture of like what all people who are into cross-dressing are about or how they think and feel, because I don't think it's been said yet that Nitori wants to be a woman, but just that he likes dressing in women's clothing, which I think, which again is maybe kind of a gender identity issue, but I don't know, because obviously there's a big difference between somebody who likes dressing as the opposite gender and somebody who wants to be the opposite gender. You know, there's a whole gulf of difference between those two decisions. You know, not that they're necessarily related, but that, you know, there's two like some people never feel like taking the leap, and some people, you know, just go straight from the whole dressing and just want to go right to the you know, the being, you know. But again, it at least can start a conversation, I guess. I guess it's good for, like, you know, at least getting the ball rolling as far as the conversation going. Like, if, like, as far as, like, you know, getting into the mind of kind of some of these ideas. You know, I'm not gonna say read this and you'll know exactly what people who like to cross dress and transgenders feel like. It's not that kind of story, I think, and it would be too easy to say that this is that. But I like it for the things that it does bring up, and I like it for, you know, being so different from the traditional kind of manga series, because, you know, it's definitely not for kids, and it's not for and it's definitely nothing in here that feels like, you know, there's not like a bunch of swearing or a bunch of potty humor and stuff that makes it have to try and feel adult, but it just does, and that shows that it treats its audience seriously, and you know, I respect that. So I love it a lot, and I think, you know, a lot of people should be reading more of it, at least to make sure that we can get to the end of this series and then not get canceled. Right, let's see. Next up, we get Pokemon Alpha Ruby Omega Sapphire Volume 4, which, you know, continues on with the storyline of just this is maybe one of the most exciting kind of ongoing series, because everything that has gone before this is leading up right into this. And I like all the characters coming back and mixing in with these new Pokemon. You know, you've got threads left over from Ruby and Sapphire that are coming back. You've got threads left over from Emerald that are coming back. You've got Red and Blue and Green coming back, and they're learning Mega Evolution with their starters, and everybody's getting in the mix. There's a space shuttle, and they're having a fight on top of a space shuttle, and Hoopa is you know, involved, and he accidentally brings out you know, Kyogre and Groudon, and then Magma and Aqua get a hold of it, and they revert it to its primal forms, and then Ruby is basically saying, well, I guess I gotta find Rayquaza so I can return Rayquaza to his primal form so that he can stop these two and the meteor that's coming to Earth. It's like all the stakes. We're doing all the stakes at once. There's at least 5 different Earth-ending apocalyptic events that are all hitting at once. And the guys are just trying everything they can to put out as many fires as fast as they can. And I love it. It's so good what they're doing with this series and how far they're pushing it. It's so much fun. All right, and then we come again to near the end of the manga update, where I try to save something for the last end. For this time is a lot of series that are actually ending. First up, I got Pokemon XY with 9 through 12, which actually ends the run of Pokemon XY. Which, you know, I've already seen the announcement that they're going to bring over Pokemon Sun Moon. So I guess there hasn't been any announcements for a sequel yet to XY. So whether or not we get any continuations of this storyline, I don't know. This was kind of an odd one. I would say that this is maybe the weakest of the Pokemon series, because it's just, I don't know. It felt like. I don't know, it felt too rushed, because this is the equivalent of like 6 volumes, because, you know, they're 2 apiece, and I think that actually makes it the shortest of all of the Pokemon arcs. That doesn't count, you know, the Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or the Alpha Ruby, Omega Sapphire, which are kind of like, they're almost sort of like movie, like 3 seasons in a movie kind of. Like just an extra bonus epilogue kind of thing. As far as like a main storyline, though, I think this is the shortest that we've gotten for any of the Pokemon Adventure series, and I guess it shows, because it felt very condensed. Like, it's sort of like X and Y. They get on the journey, and then there's stuff, and then the Yveltal and Xerneas come in, and then Zygarde comes in, and then Mega Evolutions, and then, oh, you're my brother, and then and it's like, pff, done. I don't know. I wish I kind of had more to say about it, but, I didn't read you know, it just felt like there was a lot condensed into these volumes, and just a lot of weird fighting and stuff, and then it just kind of pushes on. It was just kind of, I don't know. At least with Black, White, and Yellow, like that was 7 volumes, but it seemed like it went at a better pace, and I guess that helped because it was, the first Pokemon, and so it was already a pretty simple story, so you could fit more stuff into it. But this is just like, I don't know. I guess you do that many storylines, and 1 or 2 are gonna wind up duds. I guess that's how that is. It could have been better, I suppose. Speaking of could have been better, last volume of Genshikien, 2nd season, volume 11, which, again, what I was referring to with Princess Jellyfish, where Princess Jellyfish feels like a woman who's writing about women feelings and stuff. This, I definitely get the feel is like what a man thinks women think like when they're being nerdy. Because on the one hand, yes, women are into like yaoi and a lot of the BL stuff, but in here it feels more like the women are obsessed with that, and I don't know. I don't know. On the one hand, it's like, I don't know. Like I've known guys that are like, let me back up. In Genshikien, when I was reading it, I love that series because I knew guys that were like that, or were mostly like that when I would pal around with them. Coming into this, like, maybe I just missed the boat. Maybe I just wasn't exposed to it, but when I read Genshikien 2nd season with all the women in there, I never knew any women that were like this. Like some women that would, of course, be into yaoi and stuff, but like in here, it's like they're always turned on to, comparing everything to like a yaoi thing or a BL thing. Like it's always turned on. They're like, the nerdiness is always turned on with them, and I never knew women that were like that. Even like the nerdiest women that I knew were mostly just kind of, they would sometimes kind of make jokes like that or this and that. Maybe whenever their show came on, they would kind of get in the zone like that. But then when the show's off or they're out doing something, they're kind of just more laid back and regular. And here it feels more exaggerated. Like, again, like kind of how a man would think that a woman that's into like into yaoi and BL would be into that kind of thing. Like with guys, I guess it's just a different kind of world. It's a different kind of mentality. And it was one of the things that kind of felt distracting when I was reading 2nd season. And then that doesn't help either that halfway into the series, it becomes all about Madarame, who was one of the nerdy guys from the first series coming back. And then all the women were somehow into Madarame, which, again, I've never seen that in real life. Like, I've never seen 4 women all into one dude. Like, maybe they would be, like, all into, like, Channing Tatum or some other celebrity. They would all be into that dude. But, like, as far as, like, someone in real life that they really knew and they were really interacting with, I've never seen 4. I've barely even maybe seen 2 women into the same dude at the same time. That was also somebody that they were friends with and, chatted with on a regular basis. Like, maybe it does happen. Maybe this is a common thing, and I just missed the boat. I wasn't exposed to it. But, I don't know. In any case, it just struck me as not as good of a series as the first was. And that's given that it was 11 volumes instead of 9, like, I at least give it credit for, like, trying to do something for women that Genshikien was doing for like guys, but I don't know. I got more of a sense that in the first series he was drawing on real experiences with himself and with how he related to other guys. And so I got kind of the feeling that every one of those guys in the first series was somehow a part of him and some part of his personality and mixed with maybe a little bit of guys he knew. Whereas in second season, like, it didn't feel like any of these women were part of, like, his kind of personality. Like, they just felt like, okay, I know that there's got to be, like, one girl that's like that, one girl that's like that, and one girl that's like that. And that's the series. And it's like, you know, that's just kind of how he thinks women are. And we just have to make sure we get one of each kind of stereotype. It's kind of like, the first Genshikien was a little bit like that. Everybody was into, like, their one thing. But it felt more like they just had, like, one interest and they were all into, like, everything mostly together. Whereas in here, obviously, all the women are, like, that one kind of stereotype. And by the end, it's just he had to make it into, like, kind of this sort of anti-harem sort of spoof thing. Where all the girls are sort of making fun of harem tropes, and they're like, well, we gotta figure out who Madarame loves, and then that becomes the crux of the last couple volumes: is who does Madarame actually want to be with, and then it completely like stops being about the girls, and it becomes about Madarame, which Princess Jellyfish is a better version of this, is what I'm trying to say. And it's not because, like, I don't know girls that are in... It's not the fact that, like, I don't know any women that like jellyfish or are into trains or something. It just feels like it feels more fun and more believable in that. And those characters feel more real than the characters in this. And the characters in this just kind of feel more, like, sort of thought up and, like, kind of a stereotyping and a cookie cutter. And, you know, in Princess Jellyfish, it feels more like those are women that she knew, and those are women that she could understand, and or at least women that were also a part of kind of herself that she put in there. And in here, it doesn't feel like there's any of these women that felt like they were a part of the author that he put into them. And I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much. You know, maybe I'm being too harsh. But, you know, Genshikien was so good that any kind of dip is a dip for me. So that's kind of what I have to say about it. I would still, you know, take the first series way over second season. And I would only reserve second season for those that are just absolute diehards and they want to see where things go from the first one, I guess. Next up, another ending series. We have Tokyo Ghoul volumes 13 and 14. Now I did read 13 before, but it got shuffled into a mix and I just flat out missed it. And 14, that was you know, I just read that, and I don't know. I wish I could tell you what happened in here other than just one big fight. It was one big fight, and Kaneki lost ish. I don't know. It's one of those endings where it feels like everything happens at once, but then also nothing happens. It was just, I don't know. I think it lost me kind of a few volumes back from this, where it was like I lost track of what Kaneki was doing, and then because I lost track of what Kaneki was doing, I also lost track of what Akira was doing. And everybody else, and I don't know. Overall, I thought it was a good series. It had great horror elements to it. I just wish it would have kept up with the horror. It felt like it toned it way back a little while in, especially when they started introducing the Kagunes as being a part of this sort of rock paper scissors kind of thing, like certain Kagunes could beat the other ones and stuff. And they were all put in these neat little categories, and I don't know. I would have liked less explanation about that. That felt a little too shonen-y. And I thought that if it could have stayed less in the shonen and more in the horror, it would have done better for itself. And, you know, that was also kind of my complaint with them focusing so much on the CCG. Was, again, I was feeling very shonen-esque, where, you know, they develop these kinkyus, these little weapon things they make from dead ghouls' kagunes, and then you know they fight with those against them, and certain ones can beat other ones, and it's just, again, you're doing the shonen thing, and you were doing a lot better when you were just a straight up horror. I liked you better as a horror. You could have stood out. You would have been fun and creepy and disgusting, but you went the shonen route. You took the easy way out. You took the easy way out, and you're better than that. Still better than the anime, where I heard apparently that Kaneki, partway in the series, actually joins the CCG, which then I would say, like, that's 100% shonen direction you took there. So at least I give the manga credit for not taking the completely low road in that regards. At least you did something. And I'll still pick up Tokyo Ghoul Ray, which I heard is actually really good as a sequel series, I think, to the main one. I don't know. Then, all right, this one is one that I missed a little earlier in this collection, but I might as well get it here so I don't forget to, you know, later. This is Yoshihiro Tatsumi's Midnight Fisherman. I actually missed this a long while back from Yoshihiro Tatsumi's other works, mostly because this was put out by who? This was put out by Landmark Books. Landmark Books Limited, which, again, I have no clue who this publisher is or anything. I don't think they did anything else, but hey, more Yoshihiro Tatsumi is good by me. And this is just a collection of short stories he did. Nothing too fancy. Nice little introduction about Tatsumi and his Gekiga, which was the adult underground comics he was doing at the time. And then we go right into a lot of the various short stories he did. With Midnight Fisherman, two young men who plan to escape to rural northern Japan from the bottom of a large city, and then Welcome Home, Daddy, which is about a guy who goes to a gambling parlor, and he tries to gamble like everything, and eventually he has to put everything on the line to win his earnings back because he's in too deep with the gambling. And then he happens to win it all back, and it's sort of like it's business as usual, even though it's like he almost bet his house and everything, and he could have lost it all, but he won it all back. And it's like a lot of these are stories that kind of they kind of have an ending, but it's not at like a narratively satisfying ending. It's not like they come with any kind of big revelation or something. It's kind of like they're kind of these melancholy sort of endings. Like the ending of Welcome Home, Daddy is just, yeah, this guy bet everything, but it's also like this kind of sad, somber note that this is just how he does things. He's just like this chronic gambler who I guess hates his regular day-to-day job, and the only kind of thrill or entertainment he gets is by just betting everything and risking it all just to win it all back, I guess. And then a few of the other stories here. Was it Dawn of Porn? Which, yeah, this is a story about a couple who decide to go house sitting, and they find out that across the street is this hot tub sauna that where they can see all the naked people, and like they're like, oh, I guess that's why they told us not to open the drapes, because they didn't want us to see the nice view they got. But then they realize, oh wait, the reason why they don't want them to to open the blinds is because the sauna's chimney, the chimney leading from the sauna, blows right into their apartment house. So they always keep it shut so the soot doesn't get in. And then, of course, the soot gets in, and the couple have to try to clean everything up really fast before the owners actually get home, and they don't discover that they've been trying to peep out the window. And then Run with the Midnight Train. This one was like, I forget. This is just like a weird one where a guy, he buys this one little plot of land, and then he becomes obsessed with cleaning it and knowing where everything's gonna go on his little plot of land. Like, this is where I'm gonna put the living room, and this is where that's gonna go. It's just, I don't know. It has a lot to, I guess, with like people who became obsessed with owning land in Japan early on or something. And then another one, My Boobs, which is about a woman's breasts and the men who, become obsessed with them. And then, I don't know, it just had a weird ending. Like, I don't know, that's like a lot of these endings. The best one in this was actually The Woman's Place, The Woman's Palace, which this is the only sci-fi story that's in this collection, and actually the only sci-fi story that I think Tatsumi ever did, or at least the only one that ever got translated, which is actually about this old, rickety housekeeper bot who is taking care of this old woman, but like is constantly having trouble keeping up with the day-to-day routine because his parts keep failing on him, and of course, because he's so outdated, it's hard to find parts to replace them with. And the same is, and of course, it mirrors the woman, because the woman is so old that she's become bedridden and completely dependent on this robot for her day-to-day activities. And then it finally happens that the robot actually becomes so rickety and injured that the physician who comes by to visit actually says that it's too dangerous to have him even work there any longer, that he poses a risk to the woman if he were to ever break down, and then she would, I guess, starve or something. And so the story actually ends with the woman, with the robot fully breaking down, dying, and then the woman calling up, and then the woman finally calling up to order a brand new robot to take care of her, which I thought was like this incredibly sad and somber story. And then you zoom out and you see that like the woman lives on this one little plot of land, but it's surrounded by all this development and stuff around it, kind of showing, I guess, like that, that she kind of preferred like some of the older stuff, but at the same time everything around her was developing and changing, and she would eventually have to keep up with things. And then you got Hometown, which is about this guy who actually fishes using cormorants, which are a kind of bird that dive into the water to catch fish. And the idea is that, I guess, you would tie a rope to the cormorant's leg, so that when it dived to catch fish, you would yank it back, and then you would like pull the fish out of its mouth because it swallows the fish whole, and then you catch fish doing that, which is, I guess, kind of weird and also, I guess, kind of cruel. I don't know. Maybe, you catch a couple fish and then you let it catch fish to eat for itself, and so everybody's happy. I don't know. I'm not an expert in cormorant fishing. But in any case, there's of course the parallel that the woman who left the town has then come back to town, and she's remembering things from her past, and it all culminates with her eventually having to settle in with living in the town. And it's kind of this idea that you can never sometimes you can never escape some things from eventually happening. But it was kind of a sweet, somber story. Then a story with a guy who collects a bunch of money, but at the same time there's like these crows always gathering around that are like, this kind of ominous kind of thing, but the dude, like, it's like, whatever, I'll just sit here and count my money. And then finally the Lantern Angler, which is about this guy who wants to leave his sort of simple life to marry into this wealthy family, and the relation being that, you know, he goes to a aquarium and he sees this lanternfish, this lantern angler, which lives so deep in the ocean that the water pressure is so high that if they ever took it out of the aquarium, the drop in water pressure would kill it. You know, much the same way the guy tries to go and see this woman in this other kind of lifestyle, and he can never adapt to that lifestyle, and he has to come back. So overall, I thought they were like okay stories. You know, they're not as good as like some of Tetsumi's other stories, but I thought like a few of them were decent enough. I guess it's not really much of a recommendation. You know, if you're a big fan like I am, you might as well get it, I think. But if you're just gonna get some, I would say, you know, get the Pushman and other stories, get that collection and those other ones related to it, and then also get A Drifting Life. That's also a really good one. And then those are the best ones for me. And then finally we have the last 2 volumes of Goodnight Punpun, which, you know, this last one is like a much smaller one, which, this is like, wow. I don't even know how to describe Punpun to someone who's never read it before. It's about a kid who is drawn, again, like a sort of silly like duck thing, and it's about him growing up in like sort of this broken home, and then sort of trying to find his own way in life. And then he also encounters things like, you know, God, and then another God, and then there may or may not be another God, and then there's also a cult that worships one of the gods, and also something called like good vibrations. And then he also falls in love with several women along the way, and the whole series spans his life from when he's in elementary school until well after college, and he's a full adult. And it goes to all these different kind of places, mostly dark places, and it's depressing in a lot of places. And it's depressing and dark and disturbing in a lot of places. But at the same time, there's like this sort of feeling like, you know, you keep reading it and you get the feeling like you have to keep going to see where it's all gonna go. But then, much the same way as I guess like Punpun himself feels like, as bad as things keep getting, he still has to keep going, no matter where things go. He has to keep going. So I guess in that way, you're kind of the same as him, trying to see where it comes to in the end with the series. And then where it ends is kind of the way the series began, in kind of a roundabout way. And the art style changes so much from scene to scene and page to page, and it's such gorgeous, luscious art style where everything is drawn so well and in such kind of detail. In some places it's fantastic detail, and then you can tell in some places that it's just drawn in a weird way to make some kind of a weird design or weird idea. It's one of those manga series where it feels like there's so much that's experimented with as far as perspective, and art and ideas and perception. It feels like this could never be an anime. This could never be a movie. This can only exist as a manga. This could only exist in the way that it is to fully utilize itself. And because the things that are done in here, the things that are drawn and shown, only work as a manga. They wouldn't work as an anime because there would be too much movement, and there's so much of this that's reliant on the quiet moments and the moments that are still, those still moments, that it would just kind of throw things off, I guess. I absolutely love this series once I finally got to the end of it. And I thoroughly look forward to rereading it again. And I would go so far as to say that, you know, by about almost through the end of the second to last volume here, I was saying, like, you know, damn, I think this could be a contender for one of the top tens of my favorite mangas of all time. This could be another contender for that spot on my list. So definitely it's not for everyone though. If you're looking for a happy story, stay in a happy story. If you're looking for a story with some kind of where things kind of come around in the end for someone, is I don't know if that's necessarily this. You know, some of his other stories like Solanin has a much lighter tone. And Girl at the Shore, I think, has kind of a lighter tone. This goes to some dark places, and it's more, but it feels more real, even though it's much more, even though it has a lot more elements in there that feel more fantastical and abstract. Um, it's hard to say. It's hard for me to tell exactly who this is for, except that if you just want a manga series that I guess will make you feel something, and not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but it'll make you feel something. I think that's what Goodnight Punpun is good for, and it's one of those series it's like there's a lot of emotion in there, and of course a lot of emotions are bad, some are good. It's more like Pum Pum having to put up with all the terrible, awful parts in life just to find those few key moments of good stuff in it. And I guess in a sense that can be a philosophy of what life is that life is like mostly suffering and mostly terrible or boring parts. And we just wade through all of that just to get to those few really good moments that make the rest of it worth it. And you know, if you can push through all those terrible parts, then you get to enjoy a few nice parts for a little while. And I guess that's kind of the only way I can think of for Poon Poon. At least having gone to the end of it like this, you know, maybe my opinion and viewpoint will change after reading the whole thing in one go and experiencing it in total. But regardless, that's the end of Poon Poon and the end of the October manga update. Now, at the end of the September manga update. And again, I'll see you all for next month's update, hopefully. Till next time, later.